All right, so hopefully this isn't too bad of a view or anything, but I'm going to show you how to make one of these little planters from these silicone molds. So what I do is I tend to measure my plaster by putting it straight in the mold and then dumping it into like a little container with like a tiny amount of water in it, and I start mixing that just so I'm not getting like big clumps at the bottom or anything. And then I just kind of leave the excess powder that you can kind of see on there. I find it helps release the mold a little bit, and it all gets sanded off anyway, so if you have some of that powder kind of there, it's not a big deal, because if it leaves any marks, you'll just be sanding them off at the end anyway. All right, so this is what you want to get, is this plaster of Paris here, or like some sort of cement. For plaster of Paris, we generally mix it 2 parts plaster to 1 part water. If you're going to mix any like powdered paint or anything like that in with it, you would likely want to do it when you're still in the powder stage before you're actually mixing things. Just so you get a nice even consistency throughout everything. If you're wanting kind of like a marbled technique, then maybe mix it up to the pudding type consistency that you want for the plaster, and then try adding the powder paint in, and just don't mix it completely thoroughly, and you should get like a nice kind of marbly effect. I mixed it up beforehand just because when I tried to do this video earlier and I was trying to mix it on camera, it was just horrible, and I ended up with like a big clumpy mess that was just awful. So anyway, this is about like kind of pudding consistency, maybe a little bit thicker. You could thin it out and use it a little bit thinner. It will increase your drying time. You don't want to thin it out too much because then you're going to like weaken the plaster. It's not going to set properly. You don't want it too thick or else it's not going to go into your mold properly, and you're going to have probably parts where it's just like dried plaster mixed in with your wet stuff, like chunks and kind of things like that we don't want. So you want to kind of like this pudding consistency. The thinner it is, the more likely you are to get bubbles. So just be aware of that as you're stirring it. When you make it up, you want to use it within 6 to 10 minutes or else it'll start to set. So you want to fill the first quarter to third of your mold first. It's pretty easy. You probably want to use a spatula rather than like a chopstick like I'm doing. I'm just kind of using what I had in my little studio here, to be honest, because I'm too lazy to go downstairs. All right, so there, I just kind of shove it down into the cracks just to make sure it gets in, but that would happen anyway when you're shaking it here. So you want to shake and kind of turn and tap your mold. You can see kind of, I'm not sure if you can see them there, but there's like some little air bubbles that are kind of, there's one right there, and then another there, and there, and there. Those are going to be through it, so you want to tap it kind of as you go. That's why I filled this up a little bit too full, but I'm rushing a little bit. I would be a little, obviously more careful if I was doing this for somebody other than myself. This is one that I'll just keep and do something with. But yeah, so just fill it up little bits at a time, tap it to get the air bubbles out, and then just add a little bit more, do the same thing, add, tap down, shake it a little bit, just get those bubbles out. If you have long hair like I do, some of it's probably going to end up in there. Not much you can do unless you keep your hair tied back, which I obviously did not think to do beforehand. So by using the mold to measure it, I find I get pretty much exactly how much I need. And I always add a little bit more as I'm mixing, mostly because I like to be a little bit overcautious, and you know, you're going to lose some to the edges. You want to fill it out a little bit more, so you are getting that nice hard bottom there. Nice solid bottom. If you don't fill it up quite enough, then the bottom will be a lot thinner. Don't worry about it coming off the edges like this, because once we pop it out, they'll just flake off. You can kind of see, I'm just going to move this off to the side here. So you can kind of see on this one, it was much too chunky. This is one I made when I tried to do the video earlier. Much too chunky on the bottom here. So I've got like a lot of hard ridges that I'm going to have to sand out. But it went over the edge a bit. So you can kind of see here, these just like they just crumple off. It's not a big deal to get those off as you're removing it from the mold. And then all you want to do once it's dry, so you're going to let it dry in here for about an hour or so. Then it's dry enough that you can pop it out of the mold, and then you want to leave it for another 24 hours before you do anything with it. That'll just give it a chance to completely dry out and seal and everything. And then you want it, after 24 hours, you'll just take a piece of fine sandpaper here. This is actually maybe a bit on the coarser side than what you want to use, but it's what I had here. And you just go along it. You can see how easily it kind of flakes off there. You're just smoothing out the edges and making sure that any air bubbles are sanded off, you know, that kind of thing, that you're just getting a nice clean look. You don't have any weird little marks or mars or anything on it there. And this was, again, was like one of my experiment ones when I first started. So you can see, like, this is what'll happen here, kind of, if you get air bubbles in there. You'll get these little guys here, but again, not a huge deal to just sand them off. So I was talking about how you can add some paint to it to kind of give it a color. This one here, I ground up, again, I was like just kind of experimenting when I first got my package in the mail, and I really, you know, wanted to do something with it. So I experimented, and this one is Conte chalk, kind of ground up and mixed in with the plaster, and I really like the effect it gave it here, just this like nice pink color. Probably not going to do it with a Conte chalk again, because that stuff's expensive, but it's what I had here. I didn't have any like liquid paint or anything like, or sorry, powder paint or anything like that. So yeah, you're gonna do that, wipe it all down, and then you're gonna take something like Mod Podge here. I get the matte one because I'm just not into like super shiny things or anything like that, but you know, completely up to you. If you prefer a shinier look, you can use one of the shinier ones. They have quite a few. They have one that's like, you know, you can use on furniture and that kind of thing. So it's you know, there's quite a few options out there for you. And again, obviously, oh, I don't know why I went out of, there we go. And then again, obviously, like if I was doing this not for myself and not just doing a quick video here so you guys can see it, I'd be a lot more careful, you know, clean up my station and everything after. But to be honest, right now, I just don't care. So you're going to, after it's all dry and everything, you're just going to coat everything with a nice layer of the Mod Podge here just to seal it. Just because this is plaster, it is quite porous, so if you put something wet in there, it's not going to, you know, it's not going to like it too much. So we just want to make sure everything's nice and sealed. And, you know, this stuff's pretty cheap, so just go crazy with it. That whole bottle, I think, was like $9 at Walmart. It dries clear, so, you know, no worries that way. And then you would just let it dry. Let the Mod Podge dry on here, and then you're free to paint it if you want to, or you can kind of leave it as is. I guess you can't really see what I'm doing. I should have probably been paying attention to that as well. But you can see kind of as you go along in Mod Podge here, you can see what areas you've done, and it doesn't change it like a ton, but you can kind of, I know it's still wet, but you can kind of see the kind of more matte sheen that it's getting. It's a little bit, you can tell that it's sealed rather than, you know, just the dry plaster. But yeah, if you look at that, you can get some kind of neat marbling effects. So that's kind of like the effect you'd get if you put it in and mixed it in after you had mixed water in with the plaster. That's how you'll get that kind of look. If you're going for a more solid look, again, you'd want to mix it in beforehand. All right, I'm just going to do at the bottom of this. All right, and then once everything's all sealed, you can leave it to dry. And once it's all dry, you could go ahead and paint it if you wanted to, just with like regular paints, or you can leave it as is. It's kind of, you know, up to you to do what you want with it after that. So hopefully that was an all right explanation and kind of gave you an idea. I should have put one of these in before I started the video so that it could be dry and I could show you how to take it out. But it's like, it's super simple. It's the same as this one. You literally just like peel it apart and the thing comes out and you get this nice little jars here.